Well, thank you so much, Igor, for an excellent presentation on some really important work. And several people left questions in the chat. And I guess we can start from the first one, which was, I can open them. So the first one was from Vinicius. And the question is, what's the methodology to categorize the URLs?
The methodology is basically when you, let's say you have a list in front of yourself, you put the URL in your and you just have to do a content analysis to which belongs. More and more calls from the community and especially some of our researchers who try to suggest additional categories to make the current categorization more elastic, but this might cause a problem with adjusting the probes and the whole data set, so it's a lot of work to update those categories. And from my communication with Citizen Lab and OONI, I got to update the categories, not one by one, at chunks, at stages. Let's say here we might add a couple of other categories, but not one by one. Okay, so basically the methodology, yeah, it's like the websites and determining to who's closest and put it there.
So another question that people asked was, I sent in my application for Uganda, this is in relation to the researcher positions for Netalitica. I sent my application for Uganda having been on the ground with clear knowledge in the country, but I have not received feedback on 2 occasions of my application. Is the project still on? And this is from Norman.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that question. I was anticipating this type of questions from people who expressed interest in those countries. First of all, thank you for sending your applications. Second, yes, it is still open for those countries because the way the project is structured is each month we update 2 to 3 countries from the 28 we have to update this year, and it's just the way the project is structured. That's why those countries that are still in the list, they're open for applications, and I still haven't got back to all applicants because we're still open. There are a couple of like very good applications there, and before we close it we want to receive probably more from people on the ground, and then I will get back to every one of the applicants individually with outcome of the application process. So the fact that I still haven't got back to this particular researcher from Uganda is actually a good sign, because his application or her application was one of the top ones, and I will get back to you very soon when we start doing that country. To all other applicants from Uganda, also other countries whose applications were not successful, I have already emailed all of those researchers, and I thank them as well for, like last year when we did this project, we did 20 countries only, and there was a problem like finding researchers. But this year I was amazed. I received so many applications. It's just myself who is screening them and doing the interviews. Pretty much I got more than 200 applications for 28 countries, and yeah, broadly speaking, this is the reason you still haven't received a response, because you're one of the shortlisted candidates, and I'll get in touch with you soon.
Great. And I can see in the meantime people have found the new link and are joining back in. Sorry, folks, for the the issues. So we have another question from Eric, which is asking, is there a process for adding URLs to the test list? We've got a few thousand decoy sites used in tap dance. refraction networking decoy routing that we want to track if they're blocked.
Okay. Well, yeah, this is a very good question because we're working on that. So the thing is that currently the process of updating works like this. So we open the test list, we hire a researcher, he opens the test list, he does the research for 1 month, updates the lists and sends us back the updated list. Then together with OONI and Citizen Lab, we do a final review of the list and update it on GitHub. As you can imagine, this process of update and getting the lists already operational may take more than a month. Especially even if you have a couple of URLs that you want to update to the list, there is no like overnight process that you can use in order to do that. So there are two possibilities here. One is to either email Citizen Lab or OONI, Maria. She can actually, and she's been very fast with doing this in the past, merge the new URLs on GitHub list. And the second option is to actually email it to us, and I will do this for you. This has been a problem that we identified in the process of updating the list. Many community members are kind of reluctant to update the list because they see GitHub as a confusing platform, especially those who don't have technical background. They're from the civil society, grassroots, and journalists, let's say human rights activists. So I myself find GitHub a little bit confusing at times. So that's why, as part of our project for this year, we're going to be working together with OONI to design a user-friendly intake platform that will serve something like a bridge between GitHub and the community, that will aggregate the URLs that you might recommend be added to the list and fetch them to GitHub and speed up the process. But this platform is still not ready. So at the moment, there is just one option. Just email the URLs to us, either Netalitica or OONI, and we will update them on GitHub.
Yeah. And yeah, but there's also a Git. I mean, this person is, I guess, quite fairly technical. So I guess they can probably also open a pull request directly.
Yeah.
Although
Yeah, exactly.
maybe one aspect to address, which I think is perhaps they mentioned that they would like to add a few thousand websites, which perhaps is.
Yeah, I heard that part. Yeah.
So I don't know if you maybe want to comment on that, on like what would be.
I will comment. Yeah, I'll start, you finish, because this is something we talked with you as well. So basically the test lists are between 500 and 1000. So we try to keep them. There is no firm limit, but try to keep it around 1000 for technical reasons, though this is not necessarily the truth. Like, for example, there is the list for Iran is 1500. There are others like also very numerous, but just to speed up the tests, we try to keep them about 1000. And probably, Arturo, you have different things to say here, but this is what we try to stick to in the update process.
Yeah, I mean, my thought would be that probably, I guess the goal of monitoring these sites from the perspective of Tapdance is that you're sort of interested in checking if the sites that are crossing some sort of decoy routing enabled network are being blocked. So maybe you don't actually need all of these few thousand sites to monitor. Maybe you just need one site per network where you have decoy routing enabled, and you may want to like change them over time. So I would suggest you maybe look into, like seeing if there's a way to not like necessarily add all of these sites, because although like the test lists are like 1,000 sites, there are 1,000 sites that are quite diverse. So we probably don't want to have like even hundreds of sites that are of the same sort of like theme or category or class.
I may add here, so if you want to test, not specifically in this case, but similar cases, if you want to like test accessibility to specific sets, even if that large, you can actually use the OONI run. You can generate your custom test list and then send the link to testers on the ground. By clicking the link, it will automatically open the OONI app and it will run the test. So this is another possibility if you need this to be done quickly and if the volume is pretty large, maybe you can do that. But I've heard like from, I haven't experienced this myself, but I've heard for our researchers, let's say our researcher in Iran, so he was particularly concerned about the length of the Iranian test list because he's not only researching and adding new URLs, but he's also a very active tester on the ground. So he says that by the fact that the list is very long, often results in incomplete tests, so they have to repeat them over and over again. So that's why we try to keep the number of URLs lower and just focus on a sample of representative URLs that we want to test.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm.
Okay, so we have another question from Mariam. I think there should be regional lists because regional filtering is becoming a trend. For example, Harvard published a study showing how intra-regional geopolitical censorship is expanding in the MENA region. This type of censorship can't be measured by country lists only.
That is excellent point, and we are actually working on this. This is exactly, we're also working, I'm also like in touch with the author of this article, and out of communication with him and Arturo in Citizen Lab, we decided that this is a very good opportunity to further develop the test lists with regional test lists. And what we do currently when we hire researchers, we ask them to, when they add new URLs to the list, we also ask them to mark the most important URLs that also have a regional relevance. And we make test lists for specific regions, like for example, MENA region. Currently, there is just one regional test list that exists. It's on GitHub. This is the CIS, the former Soviet Union countries. It was authored by Citizen Lab back at the day, and we contributed to that in the past. And I think this is an excellent idea because as a researcher myself, I'm designing regional lists in order to answer questions like, for example, is there upstream filtering in a couple of neighboring countries? Is there consistency of blocking the same across different regions or geopolitical conflict zones? So many of us are actually using such kind of custom test lists, which include regional entries, and we are working on setting up regional test lists. And so we actually discussed with OONI the possibility to include those in the standard tests, and from what I understand, it is doable and can be achieved by the end of this project.
Right. Okay, so we have another question coming from Hussein. The new behavior I see in Iran is that the main domain is still accessible, but the related domains are blocked. How many related domains can be added?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's difficult to answer without like talking to the actual person. I don't know how many related domains he has in mind, but trying to provide like a general answer would be I would select a couple of the added domains and add them to the lists, but I would not like go for a massive list of those because they might be unblocked in the future or they cease to exist, and then nobody would be able to clean the lists from those, and they will still there and continue to be tested in the future. That's something, by the way, which happens with the test list for Brazil. That one has more than, I think, it has 2,500 entries. This is a massive amount of URLs to be tested, and we have it like currently working on reducing its size, and it is exactly because many websites and mirrors were included at the time, and those are not active anymore, and they should be cleaned from the list. So I would go with a selective number of those additional URLs want to add, and just add a couple of those. That's what I would do. Maybe, Artur, you have a different point on that. So it's an interesting question. I haven't come across such a question so far. It's the first time somebody asked this.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a reasonable approach. I guess like if these related domains are actually mirrors, then probably it doesn't matter that much. I think if you like I would maybe test like 1 or 2 mirrors max, and maybe change them over time if they stop using them. If by related we mean like some domains that are necessary for the site to function, so I'm thinking of something like the CDN that Twitter uses for serving images, or you know, like where they serve other types of assets that may not necessarily be like their canonical domain, or like the mobile version of their site, or maybe like the site in another language. I would say that probably in that case it's even reasonable to add more than a few, like maybe
Exactly.
even all of them. So yeah.
Yeah, that's why I said it's difficult to answer without like having details from the person who asked the question. I think the exactly same way, and I'll give just an example, like with mirrors. I worked with critical mass media organizations in Russia who actually deliver content from abroad, and for the Russian market. And so basically, they would rely on mirrors, and they would generate them every week, a couple of those mirrors. So it would be highly impractical to include those in the test list, because they become inactive after a certain amount of time, and they got blocked as well. And so if it's mirrors, I would go for a couple of those. If it's CDN, so I would include more of those.
Okay. There's a quick follow-up question from the previous, which is the Harvard study that was being mentioned, the one on the MENA region. Do you recall the title of the study?
I can check it. I can look it up here, but I don't recall the title. I just recall the thesis of the article, that geopolitical conflict triggers regional blocking, which you would not be able to identify unless you try to test the same URLs across a couple of countries, see how they approach them. So I remember that idea. I don't remember the article name, but I can look it up. If you give me some time.
we can look it up, and we'll share it in the comment section when we find it. So we have some other we have many questions actually. Like the people are have been very curious by your presentation, Igor. So there's another question from Venezuela Sin Filtro, which asks, can we get a conversation going of removing some URLs from the global list and move them to the more than one country lists? It creates overhead in places where those aren't relevant.
Can you repeat it? So from the global to move them to a couple of local lists, couple of country lists?
Yeah, basically, I guess the idea is that since URLs that are in the global list are tested by all Uniprobe clients everywhere, there are some URLs that maybe are only really relevant to you know, some specific countries, but it's maybe many countries. So perhaps like the idea is, I guess, of taking, you know, taking some of these and putting them.
I got it. Yeah. This actually ties up to the previous question with the regional lists, because we are aware of that problem. We haven't still updated or reviewed the global list. We leave it at the end. We're going to do this, but there are a couple of like a number of URLs, let's say, that pertain to the Arab countries that might not be a good match for the global list, because they will be tested in Latin America, so no purpose of doing that. So I guess a way out of this problem, but they're in the global lists exactly because they have larger relevance. Just they're not relevant just to a single Arab country. They're relevant to the whole region, let's say the MENA region. That's why how to go around this problem, and researchers in the past, they put them in the global list. And that's why we believe that we need to create regional lists which will actually bridge this gap between the country, region, and global. when we have those regional lists, we will be able to move, as the person from Venezuela asked, the irrelevant links from the global to the local, and thus will be tested in the local region. If we do this now, they are not going to be tested in the rest of the Arab world, which will be a miss. You see? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that researcher. So I know what he or she means, because we were like ourselves were puzzled sometimes. Let's say this very popular news medium in the former Soviet Union countries. Should we put it in the global, because it also appears in English language, so it fits the category, or we should keep it in our individual countries? So this is another approach you can do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So another question from Mariam. Are you also producing reports based on test results?
Okay. So yeah, we produce reports, but those are for the OTF blog. And currently, I forgot to mention that during the presentation I had. Probably you refer to the graphs I showed. We're not about the project we're running is not about doing tests and analyzing the results. It's a stage before that. It's about preparing the data sets that you guys as a researchers are going to be using in order to generate reports, okay? But it's difficult to stop the temptation to check how we do and check what happens after the updates. That's why we decided to write a blog post about the effects of updating lists on discovering new instances of censorship. And now I'm writing a blog post for the OTF blog where we're going to be discussing what kind of new instances of censorship have been discovered thanks to updating the list with new entries. What type of new content has been blocked from which categories. This is not the focus of the project to generate those reports, but I will do such a report, not very in-depth one, because I don't have an expertise in particular regions. But based on the results we got, I'm going to generate one overarching report to show the benefits of updating the list with a couple of examples.
Yeah. Excellent. So another question, also from Mariam. I like the idea of keeping few social media links in country lists for control purposes.
Yeah, that was the discussion we had with our colleagues with OONI and Citizen Lab, because if you come across some not updated lists or actually not reviewed lists, let's put it that way, because you can see many lists on GitHub are updated with new entries, but none of the previous URLs have been reviewed. So they're just like full of those mistakes. So you can see some of those, they have a lot of Facebook pages, let's say belonging to particular posts of political posts or news media pages, stuff like this. So we tend to delete those because there are a lot of them, but we still keep about 5 per platform, like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We keep about 3-5 from each of those 3 platforms for control purposes in case the censors learn how to block HTTPS secure protocol in the future.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting aspect too. So we have the last question, which comes from Anadat, and it's what are some challenges, limitations, if any, regarding test list testing? For instance, how fast network measurement tools catch up on updates. What would you like to be improved?
Challenges and limitations. Oh, that's a good question. Well, it's about, well, because it has 2 sub-questions here. So if it's about the tools, let's say if you're using OONI probe, so basically you're going to be using the updated lists as soon as they got merged on GitHub. So this is the bottleneck in the whole project, because it has to, once we update the list, it has to go through few stages of review by our colleagues to make sure that first the format is appropriate, and second we didn't delete something that should not be deleted. So sometimes we miss things and this kind of creates a small delay, let's say a week of reviewing between a couple of colleagues of ours, and then it's a matter of time just to upload the updated list on GitHub, and it's ready to be used right away by the probes, from what I understand. Is it correct, Arturo? So that's once the new test list is fetched to the it's updated on GitHub, so it's automatically fetched to the probe. Is it correct?
Yeah, the probes will update within, like we run a periodic task to synchronize them from GitHub, and it takes maximum an hour for it to propagate.
Mm-hmm.
That's
so this is the first level of the question. The second, probably I'm going to broaden it up a little bit, the challenge of the project. So is to make it sustainable. So as you can see, this project of this process of updating the list is manual, and that's why it's very efficient. But those lists will need to be updated again in the future, especially removing some platforms that became dead or purged social media accounts. So basically fixing the same errors again over time. That's why we're kind of working at the moment with another organization. We're still not working formally, but we're discussing it with the ICT lab to kind of automate this process in the future. So of updating the test lists, but we're still not there, but we started working on it. So this is the major challenge for this project, to make it sustainable, because so far what we've seen over the years is that relying just on the voluntary contributions from the community is a good thing to do, but it's not going to take care of the lists and keep them in up-to-date shape all the time across the board, right? So there should be something more systemic approach to it. And we're working currently we're applying the manual approach, but it's going to last for a year or two, and then we're looking to automate it in the future. Yeah, so this is the challenge.
Great. So we have a last question, another last question.
Sure.
Also
I'll be
from
happy to
Anna. Is there any research available in which URLs are added in common filtering software or hardware? So like which URLs are part of like block lists or of devices that implement censorship?
Let's put it that way. So, as I mentioned, I researched the internet censorship in mostly in Russia and former Soviet Union countries. So basically, there is a block lists, which is not official, which can be found, but when it comes to implementing the blocking, it's up to the internet service providers what type of technology they're going to be using to do that. So there is a great variation among the ISPs in Russia how to implement the blocking. So some of them who are the big ones, they can implement more expensive technologies like a DPI, which provides for more refined type of filtering. Others, who are like a smaller providers, they cannot invest, I believe, like it was 2,000 and more American dollars into such kind of equipment. So they used even some machines that they designed on their premises, some devices to implement the blocking. So that's why the blocking in that country is very porous, because different type of technologies and equipment, and it's not properly monitored, I guess. So this will be the answer to that question. So it's I don't have a list about what type of URLs are mostly entered into the blocking technologies, because those technologies vary across countries. We don't have that. What we have is in certain cases, like the example of Russia I gave earlier, we work with a couple of digital rights organizations on the ground who for some reason are able to make this block list public. So they have it on their websites. And we actually cooperate with them in order to discover new types of URLs that are entered from key categories. And that's how we update the list.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, I know probably people would ask how the secret block list becomes public. So this is through personal contacts with internet service providers is one way to discover this information. I personally don't have those. That's why our researchers sometimes got in touch also to local internet service providers, and they can actually, if the block list is not public, so they can suggest also what type of content should be added to the list.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess that is all the time we had here, I think, unless there's some more things from the audience. No, I think I think that's a wrap. So thank you so much, Igor, for taking the time to join us and present the very important work that you are doing with Netalitica.
Thank you.
We can we'll maybe leave in the comments and in the description of this video some links where you can learn more about Netalitica, as well as the email address that you mentioned, where people can apply to be test list contributors.
Yeah.
And yeah, apologies for a little bit of technical issues. We're still figuring out a bit how the stream is going to work, but I think hopefully as things go on, it'll get a bit easier.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming to this. I'm really, because I can't see anybody, so I'm just talking to a screen here, and so I'm really pleased that and actually surprised that I got so many questions. So yeah, it's true that it's way more pleasant to be in Spain and deliver this presentation in a sunny room. But since this is not an option, I'm really curious to see how this is gonna work, and I see it's working because I received a number of questions. So I'm glad and thank you for staying with me and asking those questions. And also for the researchers who applied for the position, I promise I will get back to every one of you with an answer in the very near future.
Great, thank you.